This is a photograph by Andreas Gursky.
111.
This is an auction of a photograph by Andreas Gursky.
Gursky, untitled, number 5.
Andreas Gursky is the most influential photographer of our age.
10,000, 120,000.
He has created a new aesthetic for our times.
50,000.
Flat, dull, seemingly nothing going on,
300,000.
but also epic, monumental, heroic,
320,000 pounds. Gentleman's bid here, 350,000.
and very, very expensive.
At 390,000 pounds. With you, madam, and selling to you at 390,000. Yours, 673. Many thanks.
That man has just sold the most expensive photo in the world. Gursky's vision is so total, his quest to catalogue the ordinary so unrelenting. I wanted to find out who the man behind these images might be. I wanted to find out whether Gursky is living in the ordinary world or we are living in a Gursky world.
I'm a Gursky girl in a Gursky world. Life in plastic, it's fantastic.
I'm obsessed with Gursky, and I believe I'm living in a Gursky world. I'm just going to take you up to the roof of my flat. It's a problem I have. I can't help seeing Gursky where ordinary life should be. Here we go. Look. Look. It's totally Gursky. This whole view looks like a Gursky photograph. This is why I feel like I live in a Gursky world. If you look out over this view, there's a sense of, you know, a sort of suburban inner city area, you're not quite sure which, tranquility and calm, and there's a kind of park down there that looks like it's been designed on a computer. I'm sure it has. When I look out over this view, I can see how regimented our lives are, and that's why I feel like I live in a Gursky world. I went to the opening of an Andreas Gursky exhibition in Paris to try to meet him. I'd brought a multicoloured microphone with me in the hope that I would fit into the art world. Gursky's work was even better in real life than in books. His pictures filled whole walls. He uses a large format camera to show vast images of a world transformed by technology, global markets, dance culture and megacities. A world in which the individual is tiny and insignificant. I met the man who made Gursky a star in America.
I think he's one of the best artists of his generation. I think he's made very original pictures that are absolutely stunning to look at and very interesting to keep on looking at and keep thinking about.
Damien Hirst, Andreas Gursky, who's better?
Oh, I think Gursky is better.
Gursky is 47. He studied under the Bechers, the Dusseldorf School of Post-War Photography. The Bechers believed in objectifying what they saw, approaching a subject as if they were scientists, not artists, and examining it through their lens. They loved classifying everything. Gursky seems to set out to subvert every fundamental in art photography. He goes for flat lighting, no depth, and he's always far, far away from his subject. Most of all, he seems to avoid the decisive moment, the tradition of photography epitomized by Cartier-Bresson that tried to capture something special from the everyday. Gursky doesn't talk about his work very often, but everyone has their own theories about him.
It's not about the people, it's not about the landscape, but I think it's a little bit the person inside of the landscape, you know? It's the whole thing together that it really clicks. Do you think it's like existential or existential? Not really, no.
C'est la combinaison de le monumentalisme et le banalité.
Ouais. Non, la banalité n'esiste pas.
E dice qualcosa della vita moderna?
Beh sì, guarda, stratificazione, omogeneizzazione, felicidad.
I was having a great time practicing my European language skills, but as I looked round, I felt disappointed.
I'm a Gursky girl in a Gursky world. Life in plastic.
Gursky had scoured the world,
You fly here and there, take pictures everywhere.
but where were the pictures of Britain?
Britain's an exception.
I felt so ashamed for my country. I want to persuade him to come to Britain to take photographs.
Invite him to,
How? What do I
take
do?
a photograph in England. Why not?
How do I do that?
Call him.
It wouldn't be that easy. Gursky is busy with exhibitions all over the world. Since becoming an art superstar, he hangs out with supermodels, not people like me. He's the one on the left. Luckily, he had a personal assistant who I might be able to schmooze. No.
Oh, you don't know who it is?
Well, I can't quite tell. Is this, oh right.
But I'll ask.
Sie sind Andreas Gursky. I knew from experience that famous artists can be very sensitive. Maybe I only had a few seconds to make a good impression.
Ich weiß, dass Sie sehr viel zu tun haben und so weiter, aber wenn wir zum Beispiel 20 Minuten oder wenn Sie 30 Minuten irgendwann in Düsseldorf hätten, könnten wir mal rüberkommen und so weiter.
Also ich habe gerade mein neues Atelier bezogen. Ne?
Ja.
Und von daher, ja, kommt ihr gerne.
Okay.
I didn't yet know how I could persuade Andreas to come to Britain, but I was to receive my inspiration in one of London's smartest neighbourhoods. I was on my way to visit a collector.
Hello. Hello, I've come to see your Gursky.
This is it.
Oh wow. It's great.
Yeah, it's called Mayday 2. And what I love about it is that the light that comes in, if you look at it carefully, it's like an arm. This is like the arm. And then this is like fingers reaching out, catching all these individuals, swaying to the music, to something greater than themselves. And then almost as though whoever they're worshipping in the distance, it's as though their hand is coming to them.
Wow. I feel like I live in a Gursky world. Is that just me, or do you live there too?
Everywhere you look, there's always a Gursky. When my husband and I go past an airport, we always think, oh, that'll make a good Gursky. When I couldn't acquire Gursky in 1996, I took a photograph of myself and created my own Gursky in a place called Sun City. It was a day when blacks and whites shared this area together because normally it's segregated. It was just wonderful to see all these different people so happy doing things in action, and there's this like older man looking at this younger girl, and they're all individuals within this mass of people.
I now knew what my next step should be. If Anita could take a Gursky, then so could I. All I needed was a Gursky-like location in Britain where I could take some photos to show him. I was on my way to Reading, which is twinned with his hometown, Düsseldorf. As I travelled up the motorway, the view through the windscreen reminded me of one of his early works. Before I knew it, I was in Reading.
I think if you just look over here, you can see Andreas would have a field day here. There is just so much that is Gursky-like. This is the WorldCom building, really impressive building as you come off junction 11 of the M4.
Do you think it's Gursky?
I think it's very Gursky.
Why?
I think the lines.
I'm carrying the same large format camera as Gursky uses. It's very heavy.
A lot of Andreas Gursky's photographs are about globalization.
Yes, well, we are a global company. Right now you're walking through our finance department.
Is this a call centre over here, or?
That's a training room.
Oh, right.
Yes, training.
Gursky's office photos are always panoramic and full of people at computers. They have his trademark high point of view. I was having trouble finding this kind of composition.
Kim, You haven't got any ladders or stools we could rise, stand up a little bit?
Yeah, I can go and get you something, I'm sure.
Is that any good?
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm not sure if he'd approve of all the columns in the middle of the shot, but we can't really move them out of the way. I mean, I haven't seen a lot so far that really makes me think of Andreas Gursky. Sometimes he alters his pictures to kind of make them look wider and like more of an expanse. Oh, this is it. This is it. This is it. This is fantastic.
This might,
this is
might
brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant.
Gursky uses computers to manipulate his interiors to create seemingly infinite vistas. The closer you look at a Gursky photograph, the more you realize it's a cleverly constructed collage. Gursky would use an office like this to create an Uber office, the ultimate office, the mothership office to end them all. So that's what I did. The next stop was an emerging part of Reading's new business park. Gursky may be seen as the ultimate observer of modern life, but he often lifts his compositions from the old masters, like Vermeer. His camera takes large sheets of negative, 5 by 4 inches. It was giving me the flatness and the classical pictorial composition of a Gursky. But these scenes in Reading seemed almost too generic to be Gursky's. There was always something specific about his photos.
24, Clement 24. Where's a guy, please? Thank you, Emma. Early session. We're playing for...
I needed something more uniquely British. And then, bingo.
3 and 1, 31.
You're not going to find this in Chicago, you're not going to find it in Hong Kong, and you're not going to find it in Singapore, you're going to find it in Reading.
Yeah, you'd only find a carpet like this in one city in the world.
And that's Reading.
I'm a Gursky girl in a Gursky world.
Before I headed off to Düsseldorf to meet my hero, I needed to find out what he liked to talk about. I visited the home of his first London dealer, Victoria Miro.
What sort of questions do you think he'd like me to ask?
As few as possible.
Do you think he'd understand it if I said your photographs are like an anthropology of the age of information?
I don't think that would go down too well, no.
And what if I talked about the spectacle of capitalism?
I don't think that would go down too well either.
It wasn't a good day so far, but it was about to get worse. Victoria led me downstairs. I was in for a big shock. Gursky had taken pictures in Britain before, and Victoria had 3 of them.
So these are the 3 unique Andreas Gurskys. Apparently Andreas ran all over Wimbledon, taking shots everywhere and getting quite excited. But I think probably the crowds, the way the courts were laid out, the green of the grass, I think all that was quite inspiring for him. I think they're very much Gurskys, and I think especially with the European Cup final, I think that would be the most fantastic Gursky, but obviously Andreas himself didn't really think they were quite destined to be works.
What is a Gursky?
A Gursky is a very unique vision that we can't explain.
Right. So we'll never know.
I don't think you and I could make a Gursky if we set out to make one.
Victoria's words depressed me. So Gursky had taken photos in Britain. He just didn't think we belonged to his world. We were that boring. Armed with my photos, I set off for Düsseldorf with a heavy heart. Andreas had invited me to see his brand new studio.
Das ist sozusagen die Partybeleuchtung.
Ja? Dan Flavin hatte das.
Ja, das wirkt abends, also in einem dunklen Raum, wirkt das sehr transzendent.
I wanted to show Gursky my photographs immediately, but I thought it might be an imposition if I didn't talk about his first.
Also weder bin ich überhaupt ein Raver, ne, noch war ich das von der ersten Stunde an, sondern ich habe das also über die Arbeit irgendwie Interesse so an dem Phänomen bekommen und mittlerweile ist aber so schon, dass ich eigentlich überwiegend Technomusik auch höre. Man kann das Bild ja auch eher so abstrakt philosophisch betrachten, wie Menschen in die Welt geworfen werden und sich irgendwie behaupten müssen.
Und wenn ich sagen würde, dass du sammelst eine Anthropologie der Zeitalter von Information?
Könnte ich so.
My trip to Düsseldorf was to change my understanding of Andreas. Until this point I had regarded him as a kind of visual scientist, but he was also rather zen. He drove me through Düsseldorf in his new Maserati. We went to the lab which prints Andreas's gigantic photos. There was a pile of new works by other Düsseldorf photographers on the table. Gursky is not the only photographer in town. There is a whole school of them.
Was haben die Düsseldorfer Fotografen gemeinsam?
Ja, das ist erstmal eine sehr vermeintlich sachliche Herangehensweise. Ne? Also die Bilder sind alle neutral, jetzt mal um technisch zu argumentieren, sind alle schon mal neutral gefiltert.
Und warum ist das Kunst, sachlich zu sein?
Weil es eben vermeintlich keine Kunst ist. Vielleicht fängt es schon mal da an. Ich behaupte ja, irgendwie, man muss erstmal sehen, lernen. Also Wirklichkeit ist so vielschichtig und komplex, dass man das gar nicht, auch wenn man das jetzt mit dem Auge sieht, man heißt das lange nicht, dass man sieht.
Ja. Ja. Ich muss mich lange überlegen.
Andreas showed me a brand new work at the lab. He unveiled a picture of a Madonna concert, with Madonna in it. Really tiny, of course. He asked me a trick question.
Das linke ist etwas blauer. Oder das rechte?
Ja. Aber nur eine
Das
Nuance,
linke,
also
eine Nuance. Welches ist besser?
Die sind beide tadellos.
Ja? Wolltest du eins?
Keine Antispare.
We returned to the studio. I had just seen finished prints, but now Andreas was going to take me a stage further back in the process and show me something he'd been working on for 2 years. Formula One.
Ich verfolge ein Sportereignis, sagen wir mal, damals war das Albertville im Fernsehen und sehe dann sozusagen im Fernsehen schon eigentlich das fertige Bild. Und das ist dann für mich entscheidend, also den Ort aufzusuchen und da was zu realisieren.
Gursky says he is seeing things objectively, but there is more to his photographs than that. He's looking for moments when reality corresponds to the composition of a painting.
Man muss sich das Bild letztendlich anders vorstellen. Ne? Das wird formal mit Bildern, die ich gemacht habe, auch korrespondieren. Ne? Es ist sehr lineal strukturiert. Ne? Es gibt diese Rennstrecke, es gibt einen Vordergrund, es gibt einen Hintergrund, wahrscheinlich eine Zuschauerterrasse oder eine Landschaft und den Himmel. Wir sprachen ja auch über Sao Paulo. Ne?
I watched as Andreas Gursky put together his next masterpiece in front of my eyes, with some folded contacts and sticky tape. I realized it wasn't that Gursky's looked like everyday reality, it was that everyday reality looked like Gursky's. And when reality doesn't live up to Andreas's high standards, he just creates it. I was not sure if my photographs achieved this.
Ich zeige dir, was wir in Reading gemacht haben. Die könnte vielleicht besser sein.
Oh, das ist gut. Ja, weil man es räumlich nicht direkt so zusammenbekommt, wie das überhaupt ist. Ne?
Okay, zweites Bild.
Oh!
Ein Callcenter.
Ist auch dort? Das ist gespiegelt, ne?
Ja.
Naja, ich wollte gerade sagen.
Könnte man hier die Perspektive richtig kriegen? Das ist nicht richtig, ne?
Man muss den Deckel rausschneiden und dann muss man die neu fotografieren.
Ja, das dritte, weil du sehr auf Sport stehst. Und das ist englischer Sport, ja?
Boah. Das ist crazy. Das ist natürlich so noch kein richtiges Bild. Ne? Also was absolut verrückt ist der Boden, wie das sozusagen die Räumlichkeit aufgehoben wird, indem die Tische und die Sitze und der Boden sozusagen zu einem Pattern verschmilzt.
Diese Bilder, werden sie dich fast überzeugen, wenn du suchst nach Weddings?
Ja, das schon. Vielleicht können wir das ja mal zusammen machen.
Ja, mach mal. Maybe Andreas would come to Britain, or maybe not. But whatever he chose to do, one thing was for sure. I now knew he wasn't the detached analyst of postmodernism and globalism that people said he was. He seemed like a nice chap, and he drove a fast car.
Here we are.
Before I went back home, he offered to show me where he'd taken his favourite photograph.
Naja, joggst du?
Ab und zu.
Der Ton da?
Ja.
Ab und zu.
Ab und zu. Ich mache das sehr, sehr intensiv und leidenschaftlich. Und wenn man eben so seinen Rhythmus gefunden hat, erlebt man auch die Umgebung ganz anders. Also hier ist so in etwa die Stelle, von wo ich das Foto gemacht habe.
Ja? Welche Foto? Entschuldigung.
Vom Rhein.
I was looking at the location for one of Gursky's most ordinary pictures, but it didn't look like a Gursky today at all.
Das Problem ist, um so ein Foto zu machen, da muss alles stimmen.
Ja.
Der Wind, das Licht und vielleicht auch die Menge des Wassers im Rhein.
Banality is not what it seems. To create everyday images of modern life, Gursky has to find a unique combination of elements. But Gursky is not simply waiting for any old fleeting moments of the banal. He wants a moment when banality means something.
Also der Rhein ist mein Lieblingsbild, weil da mit ganz minimalen, formalen und auch minimal erzählerischen Mitteln für mich sehr viel gesagt wird. Also das ist für mich ein allegorisches Bild, was auch sehr viel über das Leben erzählt, der Lauf der Dinge, die Leere, die Fülle.
And there are more interesting pictures to view when